The old pickup truck groaned as it climbed the steep mountain road. Every bump and pothole seemed to rattle something loose, and Daniel could swear the engine was making a new sound today. He didn't have money to think about that right now. He had bigger problems. His whole body ached from 12 straight hours of hauling concrete blocks at the construction site. His hands were covered in small cuts and calluses that never seemed to heal anymore. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the weight sitting on his chest every single day. That weight had a number attached to it, several numbers actually, all of them with dollar signs. The eviction notice was the worst one. 30 days. That's what the paper said. 30 days to come up with 2 months of back rent, or he and his little girl would be out on the street. And that was just one problem on a very long list. Daniel rubbed his tired eyes and checked the dashboard clock. He was taking the long way home again, even though gas wasn't cheap. Sometimes a man just needs a few extra minutes to think, or maybe to not think. The mountain road was quiet and empty this time of evening, with the sun starting to dip behind the peaks. His daughter Lily was waiting for him at Mrs. Patterson's house down the street from their apartment. Sweet old lady, always willing to watch Lily after school until Daniel got home. He never had enough money to pay her what she deserved, but she always waved him off. Just bring her by, she'd say. She's good company. Daniel made a mental note to fix her leaky faucet this weekend. It was the least he could do. The road curved sharply ahead, and that's when Daniel saw it. A fancy black car, the kind that costs more than he'd make in 5 years, sitting at an angle off the side of the road. The front end was pointed toward the edge of the cliff, and even from a distance Daniel could see it wasn't in a good position. One wheel looked like it was barely on solid ground. A woman stood next to the car, and even from 50 feet away, Daniel could see she was in trouble. She was older, maybe in her 60s, wearing clothes that probably cost more than his rent. She had her phone in one hand, and she looked frozen in place like she was afraid to move. Daniel's first thought was that he didn't have time for this. He was already running late. Mrs. Patterson would worry. Lily would be asking where Daddy was. But his foot hit the brake anyway. Some things you just do, even when you don't have the time or energy. He pulled his truck onto the shoulder and climbed out. Up close, the situation looked even worse. The luxury sedan was teetering on loose gravel, its front tires just inches from a drop that had to be at least 200 feet. One wrong move and that car would go tumbling down the mountainside. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Daniel called out as he approached carefully. The woman turned to him, and he could see relief flood her face. "Oh, thank God, I didn't know what to do. My phone has no signal up here, and the car just died when I tried to back up. I'm afraid if I get back in it—" "Don't get in it," Daniel said quickly. "Just stay right where you are for a minute." He walked around the vehicle slowly, checking every angle. The back wheels had traction, but the front end was on loose rocks and dirt. The cliff edge was crumbling a bit where the weight was pressing down. This wasn't good. "What happened?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "The GPS sent me up here," the woman said, her voice shaking. "I was trying to find the mountain resort on the other side, and it said this was a shortcut. When I realized it was wrong, I tried to turn around, and then the car just wouldn't start again. I don't know anything about cars. I just panicked." Daniel nodded. He looked at his watch. 20 minutes until he'd told Mrs. Patterson he'd be there. He looked back at the woman, then at the car hanging over the edge of a mountain cliff. "Okay," he said. "I'm going to help you, but I need you to stay back while I work." "Can you do that?" Yes, of course. Thank you so much." Daniel went back to his truck and grabbed everything he had. A tow rope that had seen better days, some rope he used for work, a couple of heavy-duty tie-downs. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. He also grabbed the biggest rocks he could carry from the roadside. The next hour was slow, careful work. Daniel positioned his truck at an angle, making sure it was on the most solid ground he could find. He attached his tow rope to the woman's car, but he didn't dare try to pull it yet. First, he wedged rocks behind the back wheels, then more rocks. Then he tied additional ropes to nearby trees, creating a web of security lines. The woman who had introduced herself as Catherine stood at a safe distance, watching with wide eyes. "You really know what you're doing," she said. "Not really," Daniel admitted, sweat dripping down his face despite the cool mountain air. "But I've pulled trucks out of mud on job sites. Same idea, just a lot more scary." His hands were bleeding now. The rough rope had torn open old calluses, and he'd scraped his knuckles on the underside of her car. He wiped the blood on his jeans and kept working. Finally, after testing every connection twice, he slowly backed his truck up. The rope went tight. The woman's car shuddered but held. Inch by inch, Daniel pulled it away from the cliff edge, back onto solid ground. When the car was finally safe, Daniel's legs nearly gave out from the relief. He put his hands on his knees and took a deep breath. Catherine rushed over. "You saved my life. You actually saved my life. Please let me pay you. Let me give you something." Daniel shook his head. "I'm just glad you're okay, ma'am." "No, please. You spent so much time. Your hands are bleeding. You must let me—" "Really, it's fine," Daniel said. He checked his watch and his stomach dropped. He was 40 minutes late. Mrs. Patterson would be worried sick. "I just need to get going. I'm late picking up my daughter." He walked to his truck, but Catherine followed him. "At least give me your name. Your number. Something. I need to thank you properly." Daniel pulled out one of his crumpled business cards from the glove compartment. It just had his name and phone number on it, along with handyman services printed at the bottom. He'd made them at the library 2 years ago when he was trying to pick up extra work on weekends. "Just in case you need it for insurance or something," he said, handing it to her. Catherine took the card and held it like it was precious. "Daniel Torres," she read aloud. "Thank you, Mr. Torres. You have no idea what you've done for me today." If only that were true, Daniel thought as he drove away. If only she knew that while he was saving her from going over a cliff, his own life was sliding toward an edge he couldn't see any way back from. By the time he picked up Lily, he was nearly an hour late. Mrs. Patterson was gracious as always, but Lily's worried little face made his heart hurt. "Sorry, baby," he said, buckling her into the truck. "Daddy had to help someone." "It's okay," Lily said in that way kids do when they're trying to be brave. Mrs. Patterson and I made cookies. As they drove home to their tiny apartment, Daniel's mind was already back on his problems. The eviction notice. The bills. The fact that his truck's transmission was making that grinding noise again. The fact that Lily needed new shoes, but he'd been putting it off for 2 months. He'd helped someone today. That felt good. But it didn't change anything. Tomorrow he'd wake up to the same impossible situation. The same feeling of drowning with no one to pull him back to shore. He had no idea that the woman on the mountain was studying his card at that very moment, making a phone call that would change everything. 2 weeks passed, and Daniel forgot all about the woman on the mountain. He had too many other things to worry about. Life had a funny way of piling problems on top of problems until you couldn't see the sky anymore. The eviction became real. His landlord, Mr. Chen, wasn't a bad guy, but he had bills too. "I'm sorry, Daniel," he'd said, handing over the official papers. "I've given you as much time as I can. 30 days from today I need the apartment back." Daniel had just nodded. What else could he do, beg? He'd already done that. Explain his situation? Mr. Chen knew. Everyone in the building knew that Daniel was barely hanging on. That same week, everything else started falling apart too. The construction site cut his hours because winter was coming and outdoor work was slowing down. Instead of 6 days a week, he was down to 4, maybe 3 some weeks. That meant his already impossible budget just became completely impossible. And then came the worst news of all. Lily had been tired a lot lately. More than usual. Daniel had noticed but tried to tell himself it was just normal kid stuff. Growing pains. Maybe not enough sleep. But when she fainted at school, the nurse called an ambulance. Daniel left work immediately, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. At the hospital, the doctors ran tests. So many tests. Each one cost money he didn't have. And then they sat him down in a small, cold room and told him things no parent ever wants to hear. Lily had a heart condition, a serious one. She needed surgery and she needed it soon. Within 3 months, the doctor said. Maybe sooner if things got worse. Daniel sat there in that chair and the doctor kept talking, but all Daniel could hear was the number. $175,000. His insurance would cover maybe $40,000. That left more than $100,000 that he had to come up with somehow. He walked out of that hospital feeling like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed. Lily was sitting in the waiting room, coloring in a book the nurse had given her. She looked so small, so fragile, so completely unaware that her daddy had no idea how to save her. "Am I going to be okay, Daddy?" she asked in the truck on the way home. "Of course you are, baby," Daniel said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "Daddy's going to take care of everything." But he had no idea how. None at all. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Daniel sat at their small kitchen table and spread out every bill, every piece of paper, every statement. He had a calculator that was missing the number 7, so he had to do some math in his head. No matter how many times he added it up, the answer was the same. Impossible. He looked at options he never thought he'd consider. Those payday loan places with the crazy interest rates. Selling everything he owned, though he didn't own anything worth much. He even looked up how much he could get for his truck, but he needed it for work. Without work, he'd have nothing at all. Around midnight, Daniel put his head down on that table and cried. Really cried for the first time since his wife had died 4 years ago. He was 34 years old and he couldn't save his own daughter. What kind of father couldn't protect his child? He must have fallen asleep there because the next thing he knew, sunlight was coming through the kitchen window. His neck hurt from the awkward angle. Lily was standing next to him in her pajamas, looking worried. "Daddy, are you okay?" He wiped his face quickly and forced a smile. "Yeah, baby. Just tired. Let's get you some breakfast." The next few days were a blur. Daniel went to work but couldn't focus. He dropped a hammer on his foot, nearly fell off a ladder. His boss pulled him aside and asked if everything was okay. Daniel lied and said yes. He called the hospital and tried to work out a payment plan. They were sympathetic but firm. 35% down before the surgery. That was still over $50,000. Money he would never have in 3 months. Maybe not in 3 years. One morning, while Lily was still asleep, Daniel heard a knock at the door. A FedEx driver stood there with a large envelope. Daniel had to sign for it, which seemed weird. He wasn't expecting anything. He opened it at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Inside was a letter on fancy paper, the kind that felt expensive just to touch. The letterhead said, Hayes Medical Trust in elegant letters. Daniel read it once, then again. Then a third time because his brain couldn't process what his eyes were seeing. The letter said that an anonymous donor had set up a medical trust fund in his daughter's name. The fund would cover the complete cost of her surgery, all of it, plus 2 years of follow-up care, medications, everything she would need. The letter had official-looking stamps and signatures, but that wasn't all. There was a check attached. $15,000. The memo line said, housing assistance. Daniel's hand started shaking so badly he had to put the papers down. This had to be a mistake. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. This was some kind of scam. Or a mix-up. Someone would call in an hour and say, sorry, wrong person. He found the phone number at the bottom of the letter and called it with trembling fingers. A professional-sounding woman answered. Law offices of Morrison and Associates. Hi, I got this letter, Daniel stammered. About a medical trust? But I think there's been a mistake. What's the name on the letter, sir? Daniel Torres. For my daughter, Lily Torres. He heard typing on a keyboard. No mistake, Mr. Torres. The trust has been properly established and funded. The money has been set aside specifically for your daughter's medical care. But who? Who set it up? I don't understand. The donor wishes to remain anonymous. I'm not at liberty to disclose that information. But why? Why would someone do this? There was a pause. The woman's voice softened. The letter should explain that, Mr. Torres. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Daniel read the explanation line again after he hung up. For a man who stops to help strangers without expecting anything in return, the woman on the mountain. It had to be. But she'd seemed nice, grateful even, but not wealthy. Though now that he thought about it, that car had been expensive. Really expensive. And her clothes. The way she carried herself, who was she? Daniel sat there for a long time, just staring at the check and the letter. Lily came out of her bedroom rubbing her eyes. What's that, Daddy? He looked at his little girl, and for the first time in weeks he felt like he could breathe. Really breathe. It's a miracle, baby, he said, and his voice broke. It's an actual miracle. The check was real. He deposited it that afternoon, half expecting the bank to tell him it was fake. But it cleared. The money appeared in his account, and for the first time in years, Daniel saw numbers that didn't make him feel sick. He paid his rent. All of it. The back rent, next month's rent, and the month after that. Mr. Chen looked shocked when Daniel handed him the money order. Everything okay? The landlord asked, concerned. Yeah, Daniel said, and meant it. Everything's going to be okay. He bought Lily the shoes she needed. New ones, not the second-hand ones from the thrift store. He bought groceries without checking every price. He even got her some new crayons and coloring books because hers were worn down to nubs. That night, Daniel called the hospital and scheduled Lily's surgery. The woman on the phone confirmed that the medical trust had contacted them. Everything was arranged. Lily was scheduled for 3 weeks from now. After Lily went to bed, Daniel stood in their small apartment and looked around. It wasn't much. The carpet was old, the paint was chipped, and the heater made weird noises, but they weren't being kicked out. His daughter was going to get the surgery she needed. They were going to be okay. He pulled out that business card he'd given to the woman on the mountain, wondering if he should try to find her and thank her. But the attorney had said she wanted to remain anonymous. Some people were like that. They did good things and didn't want credit. Daniel respected that, even though every cell in his body wanted to track her down and tell her what she'd done. She'd saved his daughter's life. She'd saved his life too, in a way. She'd pulled him back from an edge he didn't even realize he was standing on. He looked at the card for a long time, then tucked it back into his wallet. Someday, somehow, he'd find a way to pay this forward. He didn't know how yet. He was still just a construction worker barely making ends meet, even with the gift he'd been given. But he'd find a way. People had helped him when he needed it most. Someday, when he was in a position to help someone else, he would. That was a promise he made to himself that night. He had no idea that his promise would be tested much sooner than he thought, and that the woman on the mountain wasn't done changing his life yet. Not even close. The surgery happened on a Tuesday morning in early November. Daniel held Lily's hand as they wheeled her into the operating room, and he tried to be brave for her. She squeezed his fingers and said, "It's okay, Daddy. The doctors are nice." 8 years old, and she was comforting him. That's when Daniel knew he'd done at least one thing right in his life. He'd raised a brave, kind kid. The surgery took 6 hours. Daniel sat in the waiting room the entire time, unable to eat, unable to read, unable to do anything but watch the clock. Mrs. Patterson came and sat with him for a while. His boss stopped by during lunch. Even Mr. Chen, the landlord, showed up with coffee and a sandwich Daniel couldn't eat. When the surgeon finally came out, still in his scrubs, Daniel stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his chair. "She did great," the doctor said with a tired smile. "Everything went exactly as planned. She's going to be just fine." Daniel's knees went weak. He actually had to sit back down. "She's okay? Really okay? Really okay. She'll need to take it easy for a while and we'll monitor her closely, but her heart is strong now. She's got a long, healthy life ahead of her." Daniel cried right there in the waiting room, and he didn't care who saw. Mrs. Patterson hugged him, and his boss patted his shoulder, and for a moment the world felt right. Lily spent 5 days in the hospital recovering. Daniel barely left her side, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair next to her bed. The nurses brought him blankets and extra pillows and never complained about him being there. One of them told him, "You're the kind of dad every kid deserves." On the 5th day, while Lily was napping and Daniel was staring out the window, a woman appeared in the doorway. She was younger than Daniel, maybe late 20s, wearing a sharp business suit and carrying a leather folder. She knocked softly on the doorframe. "Mr. Torres? Daniel Torres?" "That's me," Daniel said, standing up. "Is something wrong?" "No, not at all," she said with a professional smile. "My name is Jennifer Chen. I'm the executive assistant to Catherine Thornhill. May I speak with you for a moment?" The name meant nothing to Daniel. "Sure, but I don't know who that is." Jennifer's smile widened a bit. "You know her. You helped her about a month ago when her car was stuck on the mountain road." Daniel's eyes widened. "The woman with the fancy car? Is she okay? Did something happen with her insurance?" "She's fine, thanks to you. Mr. Torres, Catherine Thornhill is the CEO of Thornhill Industries. It's a manufacturing and technology company. Perhaps you've heard of it?" Daniel shook his head. He didn't follow business news. He could barely keep up with his own bills, let alone what companies were doing. Jennifer pulled out her phone and showed him a picture. It was an older woman in a business suit, standing in front of a massive building with Thornhill Industries on it. Daniel recognized her immediately. That was the woman from the mountain, though she looked a lot more confident in this picture. "She's a CEO?" Daniel said, stunned. Like a real CEO? One of the most successful businesswomen in the country, Jennifer said. Thornhill Industries is worth several $billions, and Catherine wanted me to find you and deliver a message personally. Daniel sat down slowly. Billion with a B. He'd saved a billionaire on the side of the road and hadn't even known it. She wants to thank you in person, Jennifer continued. She'd like to invite you and your daughter to lunch, once Lily is feeling better. No obligations, no pressure. She just wants to meet you both properly and express her gratitude. Daniel looked over at Lily, still sleeping peacefully. She doesn't need to do that. She already helped with the surgery. That was more than enough. That was her thank you, Jennifer said. This is her wanting to meet the man who helped her when she needed it most. Would you consider it? She's very kind, I promise. And she's wonderful with children. Something about the way Jennifer said it made Daniel relax a bit. Okay. Yeah, we can do lunch, once Lily's feeling stronger. Perfect. I'll be in touch to arrange the details. Jennifer handed him a business card that was much fancier than the one Daniel had printed at the library. You can reach me at this number if you need anything at all. 4 weeks later, Daniel and Lily were picked up by a private car service. Lily wore her nicest dress, the one she usually saved for church. Daniel wore the only suit he owned, bought secondhand for his wife's funeral 4 years ago. It didn't fit quite right anymore, but it was clean and pressed, and the car took them to a restaurant downtown, the kind of place Daniel had only ever seen from the outside. The kind with a doorman and cloth napkins and prices that weren't listed on the menu because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. A host led them to a private room in the back, and there she was, Catherine Thornhill, looking exactly like she had on the mountain, but somehow more relaxed. She stood up immediately when they entered. Daniel, she said warmly, shaking his hand, thank you so much for coming. And you must be Lily. Lily, usually shy around strangers, smiled. Hi, you're the lady my daddy saved. Catherine laughed, a genuine sound that filled the room. I am. Your daddy is a hero. Did you know that? Yeah, Lily said proudly. He saves people all the time. They sat down, and Catherine immediately started talking to Lily about her favorite books, her school, what she wanted to be when she grew up. She didn't talk down to her or treat her like a little kid. She talked to her like a person. Lily, recovering well but still tired easily, lit up under the attention. The food came, fancy dishes that Daniel barely recognized, but Catherine noticed his uncertainty and leaned over. Between you and me, she whispered, I grew up on mac and cheese from a box. This fancy stuff is nice, but it's just food. Don't let it intimidate you. That one comment put Daniel at ease. This woman, who owned a billion-dollar company, was telling him she understood. After Lily finished eating and was coloring on some paper the waiter had brought her, Catherine turned to Daniel with a more serious expression. I want to tell you something, she said. That day on the mountain, I wasn't just lost. I was on my way to sign papers to sell a property my late husband left me, a mountain resort he loved. He died 8 months ago, and I'd been so overwhelmed with grief and work that I hadn't dealt with it. I was a mess that day. I'm sorry about your husband, Daniel said quietly. Thank you. The point is, when you stopped to help me, when you spent all that time making sure I was safe and never asked for anything in return, it reminded me of something. My father was a factory worker. He never had much, but he always helped people. Always. You reminded me of him. You reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. Catherine took a sip of water and continued. I've spent the last month thinking about what I want my legacy to be. I built this company, yes, but what am I doing with it that matters? So I've decided to start a charitable foundation, a real one, not just for tax purposes, a foundation that helps working families who are struggling. That's really good, Daniel said, meaning it. I want you to run it, Catherine said simply. Daniel blinked. What? I want to hire you as the Director of Community Development. You'd be in charge of the foundation, deciding who to help, how to help them, designing programs that actually work. Daniel almost laughed but stopped when he realized she was serious. Ma'am, I appreciate the thought, but I'm a construction worker. I never even finished college. I don't know anything about running a foundation. You know what it's like to struggle, Catherine said firmly. You know what it's like to have to choose between rent and medicine. You know what it's like to feel like you're drowning and nobody cares. That's not something you can learn in business school. That's expertise that matters. But I don't have experience with, I'll get you help. Staff training, whatever you need. But I need someone who understands the people we're trying to help. Someone who won't just look at numbers on a spreadsheet. Someone who sees human beings. Daniel looked at Lily, happily coloring a picture of a house with a big tree. He thought about the nights he'd spent at that kitchen table, drowning in bills he couldn't pay. He thought about the terror he'd felt when the doctor said Lily needed surgery. He thought about the relief when that envelope arrived. What's the salary? He asked, almost afraid to know. $120,000 a year to start. Full benefits, health insurance, retirement plan, and a signing bonus of $20,000 to help you get settled. Daniel's head spun. He made $32,000 a year in construction, and that was when he got full hours. This was almost 4 times that. This was life-changing money. Why? He asked. Why me? You could hire someone with a fancy degree, someone who knows what they're doing. Catherine smiled. Because when you saw someone in trouble, you stopped. You didn't think about what you'd get out of it. You didn't calculate the value, you just helped. That's the kind of person I want representing this foundation. Someone who understands that we're not just moving money around. We're changing lives. Daniel looked at his daughter again. With this job, he could give her a real home, a good school, college someday. He could stop worrying about every penny. He could breathe. But more than that, he could help other people. People like him. People who were drowning and needed someone to throw them a rope. Okay, he said, his voice shaky. Yes, I'll do it. Catherine's smile was bright and genuine. Welcome to Thornhill Industry. Daniel's first day at Thornhill Industries felt like walking into a different world. The building was all glass and steel, modern and intimidating. Everyone wore expensive suits and talked in acronyms he didn't understand. ROI, KPIs, vertical integration. He smiled and nodded and felt like an imposter. His office was bigger than his entire apartment. It had a real wooden desk, a leather chair, and a window that looked out over the city. Jennifer, Catherine's assistant, had left him a welcome packet, a new laptop, and a schedule of meetings for his first week. The first meeting was with the executive team. Daniel walked into a conference room full of people who all looked like they'd graduated from schools he'd never heard of. Harvard, Yale, Stanford. They had firm handshakes and confident smiles, and Daniel felt his hands sweat in his new suit. A suit Catherine had insisted the company pay for, along with 4 others because you'll need them for presentations. Catherine introduced him. Everyone, this is Daniel Torres, our new Director of Community Development. He'll be heading up our charitable foundation. Daniel comes to us with real-world experience that you can't get in a classroom. The executives smiled politely, but Daniel could see the questions in their eyes. Who is this guy? Why is he here? One man, Richard something, a vice president of something else, barely looked at him. The meeting was about the foundation's initial budget and goals. Daniel had prepared notes, had stayed up late reading everything Jennifer had sent him. But when people started talking about leveraging stakeholder engagement and maximizing impact metrics, his notes felt useless. He contributed when he could, talking about what actual families needed. When someone suggested giving away gift cards, Daniel mentioned that what people really needed was help with rent and medical bills, not a $25 card to a grocery store. Some people nodded. Others looked at him like he'd said something strange. After the meeting, Catherine pulled him aside. How are you feeling? Like I don't belong here, Daniel admitted. Good, Catherine said, surprising him. The day you feel like you belong in rooms like that is the day you'll stop being useful to me. Don't try to be like them, Daniel. I hired you because you're not like them. Over the next few weeks, Daniel threw himself into the work. He designed programs based on what he wished had existed when he was struggling. Emergency rent assistance, medical bill help, job training for people who needed new skills, childcare support for single parents working multiple jobs. He interviewed families, sitting in their living rooms and really listening to their stories. He recognized himself in every one of them. The single mom working 2 jobs. The dad who couldn't afford his kids' medication. The elderly couple about to lose their home. He knew what it felt like to be one paycheck away from disaster. The program started rolling out and they worked. Really worked. Families who were about to be evicted stayed in their homes. Kids got medical care they needed. People found better jobs. Daniel tracked every story, every success, because each one mattered. But not everyone at Thornhill Industries was happy about his success. Some executives thought the foundation was a waste of money. Others resented that Catherine had given someone without a degree such an important position. Daniel overheard whispers. Charity case. Affirmative action hire. Token poor person. It came to a head 3 months into the job. Daniel was presenting a proposal for a worker housing program at a board meeting. The idea was to help employees of partner companies afford housing near their jobs. He'd researched it carefully, talked to real workers, crunched the numbers with help from the finance team. Richard, the vice president who'd barely acknowledged him in that first meeting, cut him off halfway through the presentation. This is a lot of money, Richard said, his tone dismissive. And with all due respect, what does someone from construction know about financial sustainability? These programs sound nice, but nice doesn't keep a company profitable. The room went silent. Daniel felt his face flush. His prepared notes suddenly felt inadequate. All his research, all his work being dismissed because of where he came from. He opened his mouth to respond, but Catherine spoke first. Her voice was calm but firm, with an edge that made everyone sit up straighter. Richard, let me tell you what Daniel knows about financial sustainability. He knows what it's like to budget $17 for a week of groceries. He knows how to make a car last 10 years past its expiration date because he can't afford a new one. He knows exactly how much financial stress breaks families apart, ruins health, and keeps talented people trapped in poverty. She stood up, and the room felt smaller. This foundation isn't about nice. It's about human sustainability. It's about recognizing that our economy depends on workers who are barely surviving, and that's not sustainable for anyone. Daniel understands that because he lived it, and that's worth more than any degree. She looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. Anyone else have concerns about Daniel's qualifications? No one spoke. Good. Daniel, please continue. The presentation went smoothly after that, and the board approved the housing program. But the damage to Daniel's confidence was done. After the meeting, he sat in his office feeling like he'd been punched in the stomach. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Catherine came in and closed the door behind her. I'm sorry you had to deal with that, she said, sitting down across from him. Maybe he's right, Daniel said quietly. Maybe I don't belong here. Do you want to know something? Catherine said. I never finished college. Started as a supervisor on a factory floor when I was 19. Worked my way up over 30 years. Every step of the way, people like Richard told me I wasn't qualified. That I didn't belong. That I should know my place. Daniel looked up, surprised. I proved them wrong by being excellent, Catherine continued. Not by being like them. By being better than them at what mattered. You're already doing that, Daniel. In 3 months, you've helped more than 300 families. You've prevented 22 evictions. You've gotten medical care for 47 kids. Those are real numbers. Real lives. That's what matters. I just wish I felt more confident, Daniel admitted. Confidence comes with time, but don't confuse confidence with competence. You're competent. You're good at this job. The fact that you doubt yourself just means you care about doing it right. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. And Daniel? People like Richard? They question you because they're threatened. You represent something they don't understand. Keep doing what you're doing. That night, Daniel picked up Lily from their new apartment. It was bigger than the old one, in a better neighborhood near a school that had art programs and a real playground. Lily had made friends. She was thriving. How was work, Daddy? She asked, like she did every evening. Hard, Daniel said honestly, but good. Did you help people today? Yeah, baby. I did. Then it was a good day, Lily said simply. In that way kids have of cutting through complexity to get to the truth. Over the next year, Daniel grew into his role. He became better at presentations, more confident in meetings. He learned the business speak when he needed it, but never lost his ability to talk to regular people in regular language. He hired a staff of people who understood struggle, who had lived it. Together they built programs that actually worked. The foundation grew. They helped thousands of families. Daniel spoke at conferences, sharing his story and his approach. He testified at the state legislature about poverty and housing. He became known not as that construction worker Catherine hired, but as that guy who's changing how companies think about community investment. But he never forgot where he came from. He kept his old work boots in his office closet, a reminder. Once a month, he still volunteered at construction sites on weekends, helping build homes for families who needed them. Lily sometimes came with him, handing him tools and learning that work, any honest work, had dignity. Catherine became more than just his boss. She became a mentor, a friend. They had coffee every week, talking about the foundation, about life, about the responsibility that came with having resources. She told him stories about her late husband, about building the company from almost nothing, about the mistakes she'd made and the lessons she'd learned. "You remind me why I built this company," she told him once. "Not for profit, not for success, but because business should serve people, not the other way around." One afternoon, Catherine called Daniel into her office. She looked tired, older than usual. "I'm going to start succession planning," she said. "I'm 68. It's time to think about the company's future." Daniel nodded, wondering who would take over and what it would mean for the foundation. "I'm making you a permanent board member," Catherine continued. "Not just advisory, full voting rights. Your voice will be protected no matter who runs this company after I'm gone." "Catherine, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep doing what you're doing. Say you'll keep fighting for people who don't have anyone else fighting for them. Say you'll remember where you came from and use it to make the world a little less cruel." "I promise," Daniel said, and he meant it with everything in him. That weekend, Daniel took Lily to the park. She was 9 now, healthy and happy, running around with friends she'd made at school. He sat on a bench and watched her, thinking about how different the 2 years after that day on the mountain, Daniel stood in front of a crowd of about 200 people. He'd gotten better at public speaking, but his hands still shook a little when he held the microphone. Some things never changed completely. The foundation had grown beyond anything he'd imagined. They'd helped more than 4,000 families now, prevented 312 evictions, funded medical procedures for 207 people, created job training programs that had placed 815 people in better-paying work. Every number represented a real person, a real life changed, but today was special. Today they were celebrating something even bigger. Catherine had called him into her office 6 months ago with an idea. She'd been thinking about that mountain property, the resort her late husband had loved. The sale had fallen through back then, and the property had been sitting unused. "I want to do something meaningful with it," she'd said. "Something that honors both your help that day and what we've built together." She'd sold the resort to a developer under one condition. They had to build a community center and affordable housing complex on part of the land. The rest could be used for regular development, but this piece was for people who needed it. The developer had agreed. They'd spent the last 18 months building it, and now it was opening day. The community center was beautiful. It had a gym, classrooms for job training, a childcare facility for parents who needed it, a medical clinic that offered services on a sliding scale, and meeting rooms for community events. Attached to it were 60 apartments, affordable housing for families who were working but struggling. The complex had a name: the Torres Center for Second Chances. When Catherine had told Daniel about the name, he'd argued, "It should be named after you, or your husband, not me." "It's named exactly right," Catherine had said firmly. "You gave me a second chance that day on the mountain. You reminded me what matters. This place is about giving other people that same chance." Now Daniel stood at the podium looking out at the crowd. Lily sat in the front row, almost 11 now, wearing a nice dress and looking so grown up it made his heart hurt. Mrs. Patterson was there, the neighbor who'd watched Lily so many times when they had nothing. Mr. Chen, the landlord who'd given Daniel more time than he probably should have. Daniel's old boss from the construction site. People from the foundation staff. Families they'd helped, some of whom were moving into the apartments today. And Catherine, sitting in the front row next to Lily, looking proud. Daniel cleared his throat and began. 2 years ago, I was driving home from work. I was tired, worried, scared actually. I had about $250 in my bank account. I was being evicted. My daughter needed surgery I couldn't afford. I was taking the long way home because I needed a few minutes where I didn't have to think about all the problems I couldn't solve. The crowd was quiet, listening. I saw a car hanging off the edge of a cliff, a woman who needed help, and I almost didn't stop. I was late. I was exhausted. I had my own problems, but something made me pull over. Maybe it was how my parents raised me. Maybe it was just instinct. I don't know. He paused, looking at Catherine. She nodded encouragingly. I spent about an hour helping that woman get her car to safety. She offered to pay me. I said no, not because I'm some kind of saint. I said no because that's just what you do when someone needs help. You help them. You don't think about what you'll get out of it. Daniel looked down at his notes, then decided to forget them. He needed to say this from the heart. What I didn't know was that woman was Catherine Thornhill. I didn't know she owned a billion-dollar company. I didn't know she was about to change my entire life. I just knew she was a person who needed help and I could help her. He took a breath, feeling emotion rise in his throat. A few weeks later, an envelope showed up at my door. Money for my daughter's surgery. Money for rent. From an anonymous donor. I found out later it was Catherine. She saved my daughter's life. She saved my life too in a way I didn't understand right away. The crowd was completely silent now, but she didn't stop there. She offered me a job I wasn't qualified for. At least that's what I thought. She saw something in me I didn't see in myself. She believed I could make a difference. And together we built something special. This foundation has helped thousands of families. But more than that, it's changed how people think about helping each other. Daniel looked around at the new building, at the families waiting to move into their new homes. This place represents something important. It's not charity. It's investment. Investment in people who work hard but can't quite make it on their own. People who deserve a break, a second chance, a hand up when they're struggling. His voice cracked a little, and he didn't try to hide it. 2 years ago, I was one of those people. I was drowning, and someone threw me a rope. Today, we're throwing ropes to other people, and maybe someday those people will throw ropes to others. That's how we change things. Not through pity or charity, but through believing in each other. He paused, looking directly at Catherine. Catherine, you didn't just help me financially. You gave me purpose. You gave me the chance to turn my struggle into something meaningful. You taught me that business doesn't have to be cold. It can be human. It can care. This building, this foundation, all of it. It's proof that success and compassion aren't opposites. They can work together. Catherine wiped her eyes, not bothering to hide her tears. Daniel finished his speech, his voice steady now. So to everyone moving into these apartments today, to everyone who'll use this community center, to everyone who's struggling and wondering if things will ever get better, they can. Sometimes all it takes is one person who sees you, really sees you, and decides to help. Be that person for someone else when you can. That's how we build a better world. One act of kindness at a time. The crowd stood and applauded. Daniel stepped away from the podium, feeling lighter than he had in years. Lily ran up and hugged him tight. "That was good, Daddy," she said. "Really good." After the ceremony, Catherine pulled Daniel aside. They walked through the community center together, looking at the classrooms and facilities. "You know," Catherine said, "when I was sitting in that car on the mountain, I was thinking about giving up, not on life but on caring. I'd been so consumed with business, with grief, with stress, I'd forgotten why any of it mattered. And then some random construction worker showed up," Daniel said with a small smile. "Not random, not at all." Catherine stopped walking and turned to face him. "You reminded me that there are still good people in the world. People who help without expecting anything back. And you showed me what real wealth is. It's not money in a bank. It's the ability to make a difference in people's lives." She gestured around at the building. "This is my legacy now. Not the company, not the profits, this. Knowing that I used what I had to create something meaningful, and I couldn't have done it without you." "I think we helped each other," Daniel said quietly. "Yeah," Catherine agreed. "We did." They stood there for a moment. Two people from completely different worlds who'd somehow found a way to work together and create something beautiful. Over the next few months, the Torres Center became exactly what they'd hoped. Families moved in and started rebuilding their lives. People took classes and found better jobs. The medical clinic treated hundreds of patients. Kids played in the playground, safe and happy. Daniel visited often, sometimes with Lily. He'd talk to the families, hear their stories, help solve problems when they came up. He never forgot what it felt like to be on the other side, to be the one who needed help. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel was at the center when he saw a man sitting alone on a bench outside, head in his hands. He looked defeated, exhausted, like he was carrying the weight of the world. Daniel recognized that look. He'd worn it himself once. He sat down next to the man. "Rough day?" The man looked up, wiping his eyes quickly. "Sorry, yeah, just got word my kid needs medical treatment we can't afford. I got this apartment here, which helps, but the medical bills..." He shook his head. "I'll figure it out." "I always do. What's your name?" Daniel asked. "Tom. Tom Baker." "Tom, I'm Daniel Torres. I run the foundation that built this place. What if I told you we might be able to help with those medical bills?" Tom stared at him. "Serious?" "Serious. Come by my office Monday. Bring the bills. We'll see what we can do." Tom's eyes filled with tears. Why would you help me?" Daniel smiled, thinking about a mountain road 2 years ago. Thinking about a woman who'd helped him when he needed it most. Thinking about how one act of kindness could ripple out in ways you never expected. "Because someone helped me once," Daniel said simply, "and because that's what we do here. We help each other." That evening, Daniel drove home to the house he and Lily had bought 6 months ago. Nothing fancy, but it was theirs. It had a backyard where Lily could play, a garage for his tools, and enough space that they didn't feel cramped. Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table. Healthy, happy, thriving. Daniel ruffled her hair as he walked past, and she swatted his hand away with a smile. "Homework's important," she said seriously. "When did you get so grown up?" Daniel asked. "I've always been grown up," Lily said with the confidence of an almost 11-year-old. "You just noticed." Daniel laughed and started making din.